back to the childhood version of yourself. Perhaps it was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and you were tucked away in a makeshift fort of blankets and pillows. In that small, dimly lit space, the world felt manageable. You weren't hiding from life. You were simply savoring the richness of your own imagination. There was no performance required, no eyes judging your silence, no pressure to be on. But somewhere along the journey to adulthood, that innocent sanctuary shifted. Now, when you see a call notification on your screen or a Friday night invitation in your inbox, the feeling isn't excitement. It's a subtle tightening knot of dread. You find yourself crafting polite excuses, not because you dislike your friends, but because the very thought of leaving your front door feels like stepping onto a battlefield without armor. You used to be curious about what lay beyond the horizon. Now, your greatest sense of relief comes from the click of a deadbolt sliding into place. This isn't laziness. It isn't a lack of ambition. And contrary to what a hyper-productive society tells you, it isn't sad. It is a misunderstood form of depth. You are living the core paradox of the sanctuary. The very walls you built to keep the chaos out are the same walls that, if you aren't careful, start to keep the soul in. You are not staying home. You are protecting a battery that the world drains faster than it can ever recharge. To understand why you crave the four walls of your living room, we must look beneath the surface of personality and into the very architecture of your biology. This preference for solitude is often rooted in what psychologists call optimal arousal theory. Imagine every human being has a thermostat for environmental stimulation. For the extrovert, the thermostat is set high. They require the heat of a crowd, the friction of conversation, and the kinetic energy of the new to feel alive. But for you, the thermostat is exquisitely sensitive. You possess a low stimulation preference. What others experience as a vibrant atmosphere, your nervous system registers as a cacophony of invasive data points, the flickering fluorescent lights, the subtext in a stranger's tone, the exhausting requirement of small talk that never touches the truth. This preference suggests your brain is wired with a highly active default mode network. In many stay-at-home enthusiasts, the part of the brain responsible for introspection, memory, and imagining the future is a hyper-vivid cinema. When you are doing nothing on your couch, your brain is actually performing a marathon of internal processing. You don't need the world to entertain you because your inner landscape is already crowded with ideas, reflections, and deep-seated observations. Furthermore, your sanctuary is a response to high sensory intelligence. For the sensitive soul, the home provides a rare, controlled environment. Out there, the world is a series of unpredictable variables. But at home, you are the architect of your own peace. You control the sensory input, the vibe, the lighting, the ritual of the morning coffee. This isn't just about comfort. It is about autonomic regulation. By staying home, you are manually lowering your cortisol levels and allowing your parasympathetic nervous system to finally take the wheel. You aren't missing out on life. You are simply choosing a life where the signal is internal and the noise is kept at a safe, respectful distance. But every sanctuary has a shadow. When the click of that deadbolt ceases to be an act of choice and becomes an act of defense, the sanctuary transforms into a gilded cage. Psychologists refer to this as the avoidance cycle. The more we avoid the noise of the world, the more sensitive we become to it. By staying home to protect our nervous system, we inadvertently lower our tolerance for life's necessary frictions. The external world, once merely exhausting, begins to feel dangerous. The social muscles, those parts of us that navigate spontaneity, conflict, and the beautiful unpredictability of other people, begin to atrophy from disuse. There is a specific kind of melancholy that sets in at 3 p.m. on a Sunday, the loneliness of the self-sufficient. You have everything you need, your books, your tea, your silence. And yet, there is a hollow echo. You realize that while you have successfully kept the chaos out, you have also filtered out the vitality that only comes from being seen by another. You are safe, but you are static. The fortress doesn't just keep the world away, it keeps your growth confined to the size of your living room. So, how do we honor our need for peace without disappearing entirely? The answer lies in the philosophy of the threshold. We must learn to view our home not as a bunker, but as a base camp. A base camp is a place of recovery, but its purpose is to facilitate the journey. To live a balanced life as a home dweller, we must practice controlled exposure. This means choosing high-value interaction over obligatory socializing. You don't need to go to the loud party, but you do need the quiet walk with a single friend. You don't need to conquer the world, but you must occasionally let the world conquer your comfort zone. Protect your sanctuary, but leave the windows open. Let the light of the external world remind you that you are part of a larger tapestry. True peace isn't found in the total absence of noise, but in the confidence that you can return to your silence whenever you need to. You are not staying home, you are tending to your soul. Just remember, even the most beautiful garden needs the occasional rain from outside its walls to truly bloom. There is a profound, invisible grief that settles in the corners of a home that has become too comfortable. It is the grief of the life unlived, the conversations never started, and the memories that were sacrificed at the altar of peace. While your four walls provide a sanctuary, they also demand a heavy toll, the slow erosion of your spontaneity. Carl Jung once suggested that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. But for the modern homebody, the paradox is reversed. The cave, the home, is the place of safety, while the treasure, the messy, unpredictable vitality of human connection, is what is feared. You stay home not because you are empty, but because you are afraid of being emptied. This creates an internal friction. You value depth, yet you avoid the very experiences that cultivate it. You value connection, yet you protect your battery so fiercely that no one can plug in. This is the emotional weight of the fortress, the sacrifice of belonging for safety, where you trade the warmth of a shared laugh for the predictable silence of your living room. The fear of vulnerability, where every invitation feels like a demand for a performance you don't feel equipped to give. And finally, the invisible cage, where for some, the home shifts from a refuge into a prison, where social anxiety or past trauma whispers that the outside world is inherently hostile. You begin to romanticize your isolation as self-awareness, but deep down, there is a recurring question at 2 a.m. Am I at peace, or am I just hiding? When the need to stay home becomes a primary survival mechanism, it manifests in adult life not as a simple preference, but as a series of complex defensive strategies. These are not your true personality, but rather the scars of a nervous system trying to keep you safe. You might recognize these manifestations in your own life. First, there is the next time loop. You have become a master of the polite cancellation. You are the friend who is tired again or sick again, using these socially acceptable shields to mask the truth that your nervous system simply cannot handle the unpredictability of a night out. Then there is the professional ceiling. In the workplace, you may be the invisible high performer. You do excellent work, but avoid the forced fun of networking. While this protects your energy, it often leads to being overlooked for roles that require the social capital you are unwilling to spend. In your personal life, you may experience the romantic retreat, where your home becomes a third party in the relationship, a place your partner must compete with for your attention. This is often accompanied by ritualized stagnation, where you find safety in the same, rewatching comfort shows because novelty feels like a threat. This preference keeps your stress low, but it also starves your brain of the growth that comes from challenge. Because you avoid external stimulation, your brain turns inward, creating a 2 a.m. internal cinema. You become an adult who suffers from thought spirals, over-analyzing past interactions in the quiet of your room, replacing real-world experience with internal simulation. Finally, there is the performance tax, When you do go out, you overperform. You are so conscious of the energy you are losing that you burn it even faster trying to appear normal, leading to a social hangover that lasts for days. The first step to unlearning this is not to force yourself into a crowded bar. It is the act of witnessing. Instead of gaslighting yourself by saying, "I'm just boring," start to identify the pattern. Recognize when you are staying home to fill yourself up and when you are staying home because leaving feels too heavy. One is an act of love, the other is an act of fear. To heal, you must learn to tell the difference. The path to healing for the person who finds solace within their four walls does not begin with a forced excursion into the world, nor does it require you to transform into someone who thrives on the noise of the crowd. Instead, the journey toward resolution begins with a quiet, unflinching act of discernment. You must sit with yourself in that favorite spot on the couch and ask the question that distinguishes a life of peace from a life of avoidance. Do you stay home because it fills you up, or because leaving feels too heavy? This distinction is the border between the sanctuary and the prison. One is an act of self-preservation and grace. The other is a slow retreat into a cage built of fear. Healing is not about fixing your preference for solitude, but about ensuring that your home remains a refuge and never becomes a hiding place. To heal is to engage in the delicate work of inner child reparenting. Often, the adult who cannot bear to leave the house is protecting a younger version of themselves who found the world too loud, too chaotic, or too demanding. When you feel that visceral resistance to an invitation, that urge to cancel and retreat into your pajamas, it is often that child seeking safety. Healing means speaking to that part of yourself with softness rather than shame. It means acknowledging that your nervous system is wired for a lower threshold of stimulation, and that this is not a flaw to be corrected, but a temperament to be managed. You are not broken because you prefer a documentary and a bowl of soup to a crowded bar. You are simply an individual who finds depth where others find boredom. By reparenting yourself, you move away from the performance of being an extrovert and toward the peace of being your authentic, introspective self. This process requires a form of shadow work, an exploration of the darker reasons why the door stays locked. We must look at the social anxiety, the past traumas, or the quiet whispers of depression that tell us there is no point in engaging with the world. If you stay home because the outside world feels like an assault on your dignity or a drain you cannot recover from, you are not living differently, basing your life on a low stimulation preference. You are living in defense. Healing involves witnessing this pain without gaslighting yourself. It involves recognizing that while home is the only charger that actually works, a battery that is never used eventually loses its capacity to hold a charge. The goal is to cultivate a world where you move outward not because you must, but because your inner world is so rich that it eventually needs a larger canvas. True resolution is found in the sacredness of the small. Those who truly love staying home find a specific, meditative joy in rituals that the rest of the world rushes past. The way the light hits the room at sunset, the meticulous routine of a morning coffee, the tactile comfort of a favorite book, these are not nothing. They are the building blocks of a life lived with high sensory intelligence. Psychologists suggest that this is the hallmark of a rich inner world, where the mind does not need external entertainment to feel satisfied. As you heal, you learn to honor these rituals as valid forms of existence. You stop apologizing for your solo Saturdays and start seeing them as essential sessions of neural recalibration. You are choosing depth over noise, and in a world that is increasingly loud and superficial, that choice is a radical act of self-awareness. The 17th century philosopher Blaise Pascal once noted, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." In many ways, your preference for staying home is a mastery of a skill the rest of society is desperately lacking. You have the capacity for introspection and problem solving that only flourishes in the absence of chaos. However, the philosophical weight of healing lies in the balance. You must ensure that your thought spirals at 2 a.m. are generative, not destructive. You must ensure that your solitude leads to creativity rather than stagnation. Healing is the realization that you can love your home and still be a participant in the human story. It is the understanding that you are wired for peace, but peace is not the absence of life. It is the presence of a calm center amidst the storm. As we conclude this exploration, remember that you are not an excuse maker or a social failure. You are someone who recharges in stillness, someone who values the vibe of a controlled environment over the unpredictability of the out there. If you have found yourself nodding along, feeling seen by these psychological truths, I invite you to hit subscribe. This community is for those who understand that living your best life doesn't always require a passport or a party pick. Sometimes it just requires a quiet corner and zero obligations. Tell me in the comments, do you stay home because it fills you up, or have you noticed the walls starting to feel a bit like a cage? Your honesty helps others realize they aren't alone in their solitude. The goal of this journey isn't to fix who you are so you can join the noise. The goal is to become whole, to be so secure in your own skin that whether you are inside your home or stepping outside your door, you carry your sanctuary within you. And if you want to understand the psychology that most people never hear about themselves, the parts of your personality that hit even deeper than your love for home, the next video is waiting for you. Click it and let's continue the work of understanding the quiet, complex depth of your soul.